Alrighty then, dudes and dudettes. I got some Dead by Daylight gameplay here. This gameplay is slightly old. It's before the reset, but I just enjoyed the gameplay. I never got around to editing it. So that's why I wanted to throw it in here. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to try something a little different from my regular uploads of me playing killer with commentary. And yeah, I don't know if anyone actually gives a shit, but I do play a lot of killer, and I do feel like this mid-chapter patch is going to change a lot about how the game is played, I guess. So yeah. And for anyone who does watch my videos, you'll notice that I have taken a slight break in uploading regularly like I do, and this is due to me pretty much getting a little burnt out from playing the game at rank 1 consistently. It was just kind of a grind at Killer and Survivor recently, and it gets a little annoying at times, and it becomes hard to record for content, especially since sometimes you wait so long to get into a game just for someone else's game or your game to crash. And once that happens enough, it's pretty bad. And I still do enjoy playing the game against high ranks. It is pretty satisfying to compete at that level, and it's a good challenge to test your skills and stuff like that. But I guess just not all the time. All the time it gets slightly annoying. But yeah, that rank reset though, poggers, dude. Alrighty then, on to the mid-chapter patch changes. First off, we got the doctor changes. And these are kind of interesting. A little trash in my opinion, but yeah, let's get into it. So the new doctor ability that he is getting along with his regular shock, this one is called Static Blast, bro. And what this does is that he's able to charge up his shock like his regular one, but this shock shocks everything in his terror radius, revealing survivors. If they are in his terror radius, survivors will scream and you'll know where they are. And yeah, it's cool, I guess. I feel like it's pretty much the same exact thing that his passive did, which was, it's just a way to find survivors. Since you can't really use this ability in a chase, because if you do, he starts charging up and he starts to move like a turtle. And yeah, you're not going to catch anybody. I do think this is a slight buff to him overall, since now the biggest thing is that he doesn't have 2 modes anymore. He doesn't have a shock mode, and then if you want to hit somebody, you have to switch to your punishment mode, which would allow you to hit someone. Now you're just in one mode. You can shock and hit. So that's pretty nice. But there is obviously a cooldown. If you shock somebody, there's a cooldown before you can hit them, which is another problem, because in the PTB it was, I think, 3 seconds before you can hit somebody, which was actually a pretty long time, and I hope that that gets changed. If that does not get changed, then I feel like this is really not going to be anything special. But if it does get changed to less time to where he can hit somebody, then a lot more loops are mind gameable, and he should be a little better in the chase. But overall, he's probably going to be in the same exact spot that he has been in, just slightly better. I do want to mention one other thing though that his new power does, which I feel like may have been overlooked, because their posts where they were talking about why they changed this, one of their reasonings was that it was frustrating for newer survivors or survivors to go against the doctor, since the doctor in general didn't really have to do anything to find survivors. He kind of just walked around, and then people eventually screamed because their madness went up, and then boom, he knows where a survivor is with little effort. And I feel like this new ability is pretty much the same thing in a chase though, since you can't ever really lose the doctor now, because if you juke him in a chase and he loses track of you, now he could just use his Static Blast ability, and then you scream and he'll know exactly where you are. So losing him is going to be pretty impossible, which I feel like is equally as frustrating as him just not being able, you know, just having no effort finding survivors regularly. But yeah, anyway, so there's that. Still an overall slight buff to the Doctor, which is always nice because Doctor needed some love. But I guess I'm just a little disappointed since his changes he's relatively the same with them, feel like, and yeah, maybe I'm missing something, but I'm still definitely gonna try him out and play him when the mid-chapter patch drops. So yeah, there's that. So now the big one, being the Hex Ruin change. Oh boy, this is spicy. So I know that a lot of people had, some people have some mixed opinions on this. For the most part, it seems like most people are disappointed about it. But yeah, let's get into this. So first off, I want to go over why they changed this perk. So their reasoning for this change, I think, was that for a newer survivor or just a survivor who cannot hit the skill checks was a little too frustrating to play with. And I mean, that's true if you are somebody who cannot hit the Hex Ruin skill checks, then you're definitely not having a pleasant time. But at the same time, if you can't hit those Hex Ruin skill checks, then your objective should just be to find the totem so that you and your team don't have to worry about the skill checks anymore. And then everything's good. I feel like the more you play the game, you get used to the skill checks, and eventually you will learn how to hit the Hex skill checks. It's not that difficult once you play a lot. I mean, and to be fair, there are still a lot of people even at the higher ranks who can't do it. But, you know, they know that they can't, so they just look for the totem instead. But yeah, anyway, let's get into what they changed. So now, Hex Ruin will no longer give you any hard skill checks to worry about. Now, every time you get off a generator, that generator will start regressing at, I think it was 100% at level 1, 150% at level 2, and 200% of the normal regression rate of the generator. So, get off the gen starts regressing pretty fast. And this change is actually pretty nice. I like the change. It's definitely, you know, it's definitely good to slow the game down and make it so the gens don't all pop within 10 seconds of the game. But the problem, the big problem with this is that it's still a Hex perk. And the fact that it's still a Hex perk is if you play Killer, you know that every time you get into a game, you have a very likely chance that your Hex has probably going to die within the first 5 seconds of the game. And yeah, that's not good. And the main issue with this specific new Ruin is that the new Ruin doesn't really help you that much in the early stages of the game, since in the early stages of the game, generators aren't really being worked on that much. It's mainly in the mid to later stages of the game where the generators are, where the regressing is really going to help you out. But that's the whole problem, is that your Hex perk is not going to be there in the mid to later stages of the game. That Ruin is going to be long gone by then. And yeah, I feel like that's the biggest issue here. And unlike other Hex perks that help you in the later stages of the game, the main one being like Hex Devour Hope, for example, is that the survivors don't know you have that perk until usually you get 3 stacks, which allows you to one-shot survivors when you hit them, which at that point, yes, the survivors are in a very devastating situation, and it's priority 1 to get that totem out of the game, or else they start getting moried and it's all bad. With this new Ruin, you can literally spawn into a game, touch the generator 1 time, and then get off of it to see if it regresses. And if it regresses, then the killer has Ruin and you know it instantly, and then you can go look for the totem and get it within the first... You get even faster than you would with the old Ruin. So yeah, if this change stays, which it probably will, I can't see myself using it that much because I feel like it's not very useful. But I will say that if you pair this perk, if you pair the new Ruin with, like, say, Hex Thrill to Hunt, so that you know when somebody's working on your totem, along with playing a killer that has very high mobility, like Billy or Nurse or even Spirit, I guess Oni, then in those situations, this combo can be pretty deadly, and I can see the potential in there being very hard for survivors to get that totem. But if you're not one of those killers, if you're a regular Mouse 1 killer that has no mobility, you just kind of have to walk back and forth between your totems, and hoping that they mess up eventually and you catch one of them. which I feel like most of the time you're going to walk across the map because somebody's touched your totem, and then you're going to chase them off of it, and then someone else is going to work on the other totem on the other side of the map, and you're going to have to walk back and forth. And yeah, so I feel like that's not going to be very exciting gameplay, but that's kind of the only situation where I see this perk being good. And yeah, and there will probably be builds in the future, that perks that people will find that pair well with a new ruin, and it will make it viable, maybe. I definitely just don't see it right now. Mainly, the only perks I feel like it's good with right now, at least, is definitely Thrill the Hunt, or maybe even Corrupt Intervention, the perk that makes it so all of the farther generators they can't be worked on, only the 3 middle ones, so that people won't know you have the perk right away. And yeah. But for me, the most frustrating part about this entire patch is that it seems to be balanced around the beginner or newer players to make it easier for them to play the game. And the main issue I see with this is that if you're a newer player or a beginner player, if you're going against someone who knows what they're doing, it doesn't matter how easy the game is or how easy it is to play. If you're going against a more experienced player, then you will most likely be getting destroyed, regardless of how easy things are. But what this does, though, is that now, if you're an experienced player going against another experienced player, and all these changes are balanced around making the game easier, now that their jobs are just that much easier, like for example this ruin change, the survivors who know what they're doing now can just sit on gens, and then if you go to, you know, push them off, they can run to a loop, and then other survivors will be like, oh, I'm not being chased, go on a gen. So this honestly just makes it way worse for playing at the higher ranks. It just makes it way harder for killers to do well at the higher ranks. At least that's how I see it. And so yeah, I never think it's a good idea to balance the game around newer players because, like I said, I don't think it's going to help them that much. But it's only going to make the better players even that much more annoying, or better, whatever you want to call it. And on top of that, the game is, or this patch is literally only catering for the beginner survivors. And so not at one point do they even mention anything about how frustrating it is to play killer as a beginner, when honestly both sides can be equally as frustrating. So it's like they're kind of just making the survivor's job easier and easier, and the killers are getting like zero love. And yeah, that's it's super disappointing, and definitely not a fan, dude. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. And you know, if you stuck all the way through to the end, I love you long time. But yeah, so thanks for listening. I still can't wait for this patch to come out. It should be fun to test out everything at least, and the new battle pass coming out with more challenges to do should be interesting, and the lunar event on the horizon with more cosmetics and stuff like that to earn. So it should be fun times, and definitely still gonna bop some brothers. Yeah. Alrighty then, deeds. I will see you in the next one. He's over there. Ah. I do like this all bloody Claudette with red hair. It's really nice. This is a double pip if I've ever seen it. Oh boy. Yeah,
Just give it to her.